second age of reason. The days are getting very interesting indeed. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Edward Snowden and whistleblowers in general. And he has finally been granted or been offered asylum in certain nations, which is good. The United Nations says we all have a right to asylum if we come under political persecution, as is in this case. And what is he guilty of? He's guilty of telling us the truth, an uncomfortable truth. And actually, many of us have known this for a long time. When he said it, it merely underscored it even more about the level of surveillance in America and in the world, and between governments and of the people. And now we know. If it was, say, the 1950s or 60s, and I were to tell you, did you know that there are nations that go through everybody's mail? They get their letters, they steam them open, they copy the contents, they copy the address and the return address, and they put it all into some sort of database and save it, and they reseal the letter back up and send it on its way, except for some that they may use as evidence. If I told you that in the 1950s or 60s, and I was just saying this a few weeks ago, you would say, well, that's because those people are behind iron curtains. They don't even know what's going on to them. And I would say, you're right, they are behind the iron curtain. But those people now are all of us. All the Americans, too. They're opening all our mail. Not just the emails, not just the postings on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. Not all the comments and all the newspaper editorial columns, but all the mail, postal mail that goes in paper. That is the level and the extent of it. And people who are whistleblowers have told us it's incredible the degree to which they do it. And when the government says they don't, they are seriously lying. So I'm just clarifying that so you know that if you look around and you see this shiny metal thing, and it's your new iron curtain. And the thing is, we now have ways to handle it. In the old days, they would have riots. They would have protests. And they have some of those now. But these days, they have greatly improved propaganda because the government also controls the press. I'm not sure if the press even knows that. I'm a form of the press. I'm independent, and I don't go through their system. But the main press, you know, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and others, they are all controlled by governments. They are no longer exposing the truth. They are basically just advertising. So, you have to use that in your interpretation of the news. The other thing is, you would think people would be upset now that they're behind iron curtains, or like being in Europe in 1937-38. Because they always wonder, well, you know, the Germans, why didn't they protest before World War II? Well, in our culture, they use something called medicine or drugs. The antidepressants, the calming medicine. They keep you calm, they keep you happy, well, actually anti-depressed, which is different than being happy, and they keep you with the side effects, which are unpleasant, but very useful. They keep you just sick enough so that you don't have the gumption to get up and go anywhere. anything about it. So that's the other thing that's working against we the people. And they say, well, why did Snowden just stay here and be a whistleblower like the other whistleblowers? Because they've passed laws in America against whistleblowers. I mean, Ralph Nader made whistleblower laws that favored whistleblowers, and they're undoing all that. And now, whistleblowers, some of them are facing like 100 years in prison for blowing the whistle. So Ed Snowden has all the reason in the world to not want to be here. The court system is stacked. The legislation has been stacked against this for a long time. And he's not dumping everything just yet, I don't think. I think he's still got a lot of good morsels to deliver. He's just pacing it until he gets to his safe destination, wherever that is. Whether it's Venezuela, or Bolivia, or Nicaragua. I wonder about Ecuador. But I think we're going to learn some more things. We're going to learn about maybe the puppet masters. Did you notice how at these revelations that many of the nations of Europe protested the surveillance? Well, actually, they weren't protesting the surveillance so much as that the surveillance was revealed. And then, when they thought that Mr. Snowden might be on the Bolivian president's airplane, they wouldn't let the airplane into anybody's airspace and brought it down in Austria to be inspected for safety, or whatever. Of course, nothing was found on it, and it was an outrage to South American nations. And I thought Mr. Snowden might have tried to go to Ecuador, because Rafael Correa had given asylum to Julian Assange. But then there was this issue about a phone call from Uncle Joe, you know? And suddenly his whole tune changed. So, in some ways, I'm starting to wonder about the power of the Vice President of the United States. I sometimes think the Vice President might be the Mr. Big, the man in the shadows, who's actually pulling strings. One call, and suddenly Correa thinks, oh, I must have been mistaken or something. And then Vladimir Putin says, oh, we'll give you asylum, but you have to stop saying things about our American friends and our other allied friends. And Putin, of all people, did he also get a call from Uncle Joe? And what do they know, and what are they using as leverage to change their ideas and opinions to that extent so quickly? I think it has to do with the level of sovereign debt that each nation has. The sovereign debt is the tightness of the noose, or the puppet strings. And somebody is upset, I think the puppet masters, and so they're really pulling the puppet strings tight. I just thought you'd want to know that. Notice the debt and the interdependence of those nations that are chasing Snowden and whistleblowers versus nations like Bolivia and Venezuela, which are vying to be independent in the spirit of our Declaration of Independence from the imperial powers. They are the ones that are offering asylum. It might be a good time to consider what independence and freedom and liberties are and where they really live on the planet anymore, if any. Well, that's all I have to say for today. It's been a long one, but it's important. And time is probably very limited. I think I know some of the revelations that will be coming out in the future just from guessing, like I guessed about all the mail being open. So until later, we'll be seeing you.